Graydon considered. There were no calls upon him. He had just passed his 34th birthday, and since he had been graduated from the Harvard School of Mines 11 years ago, he had never really had a holiday. He could well afford the cost. There would be some excitement, if nothing else. After he had looked over Starrett's two comrades, Soames, a lanky, saturnine, hard-bitten Yankee, and Dancret, a cynical, amusing little Frenchman, they had drawn up an agreement, and he had signed it. They went down by rail to Cerro de Pasco for their outfit, that being the town of any size closest to where their trek into the wilderness could begin. A week later, with 8 burros and 6 arrieros, or packmen, they were within the welter of peaks through which Starrett's map indicated lay their road. It had been the map which had persuaded Graydon. It was no parchment, but a sheet of thin gold, quite as flexible. Starrett drew it out of a small golden tube of ancient workmanship and unrolled it. Graydon examined it and was unable to see any map upon it, or anything else. Starrett held it at a peculiar angle, and the markings on it became plain. It was a beautiful piece of cartography. It was, in fact, less a map than a picture. Here and there were curious symbols which Starrett said were signs cut upon the rocks along the way, guiding marks for those of the old race who had set forth to recover the treasure when the Spaniards had been swept from the land. Whether it was clue to Atahualpa's ransom hoard or something else, Graydon did not know. Starrett said it was. But Graydon did not believe his story of how the golden sheet had come into his possession. Nevertheless, there had been purpose in the marking of the map, and stranger purpose in the cunning with which the markings had been concealed. Something interesting lay at the end of the trail. They found the signs cut in the rocks exactly as the sheet of gold had indicated. Gay, spirits high with anticipation, 3 of them spending in advance their share of the booty, they followed the symbols. Steadily, they were led into uncharted wilderness. That was one of the beginning passages from Abraham Merritt's, or A. Merritt's, The Face in the Abyss. This was a novel that was pretty much compiled in 1931, based off of, I think, a couple short stories that Merritt wrote about a decade earlier. A. Merritt is, as far as I'm concerned, he is one of the most, if not the most, important writer of pulp fiction, because I believe that his stories really are the prototypes for which H.P. Lovecraft and others built upon. His work, Lord Dunsany and August Derleth, or not August Derleth, yeah, my mind just completely blanked on the third one, so I'll add it to the description. Algernon Blackwood. There, I knew I knew it would come to me. Those authors are like the prototypical weird and pulp fiction authors, and Abraham Merritt's work is unbelievably awesome. His short story in this collection, The Foxwoman and Other Stories, called The People of the Pit, which I believe was written in 1918, is one of the greatest short stories ever written, in my opinion, up there with The Repair of Reputations by Robert W. Chambers. 1917, The People of the Pit. And you want to talk about a prototypical weird fiction story with an ancient, elder god at the heart of it. That story, The People of the Pit, is the basis for Cthulhu and all stories like that. So I bring up A. Merritt today in conjunction with The Seventh Continent, the game from Serious Pulp. So there are a ton of videos for this game online, and I really don't need to go into how it all works, because there are videos for the rules, there are videos for the scenarios. I mean, this is one of the most popular if not the most popular, besides maybe Kingdom Death Monster, Kickstarter game. Everybody loves this game. It's a huge hit. It's selling like crazy on the aftermarket. This company is leaving thousands and thousands of dollars on the table by not keeping this game in print. Utterly ridiculous, but that is a whole nother topic. So Seventh Continent, it needs no introduction. But what I did find interesting was in the back of the book here, in the credits, this game is humbly dedicated to Gary Chalk, Gary Gygax, Joe Deaver, Steve Jackson, Ian Livingston, and Didier Goussiric. They are a French company. That is a French game designer. I looked him up. I have no idea what he has done. I haven't heard of anything he's done, so I'm not sure why this company credited him right alongside like the luminaries, Gary Chalk, Joe Deaver, Lone Wolf series, greatest fantasy artist ever, the godfather of D&D, and then the Fighting Fantasy series. These guys are like all heavy hitters when it comes to solo adventure gaming and RPGs and adventure game books. And I think that's super important, that last bit, adventure game books, because I was very hesitant to get Seventh Continent because, in my opinion, and from what I read and saw and consumed before I got the game, I couldn't think of like why this exists as a board game, as a card game, and not as an elaborately produced game book. And after playing it for quite a few hours and wanting to play it more, I'm still not sure why it exists like this and not an elaborately produced game book. Maybe because it's easier to add expansions, because you can just add more cards, or easier than you could add new chapters. But for all intents and purposes, this is a fighting fantasy game book in which the pages and the paragraphs have their information on the backs of cards, with the pictures that you might see in the book on the front, and with the map pre-drawn for you that you're discovering rather than creating your own map. It's so much a fighting fantasy thing that they even kind of stole the tagline for the game book series there. And in my opinion, they really, this pretty much is a game of Abraham Merritt's fiction. And I'm really surprised that they don't thank Merritt in their credits also, because while I was playing this, I could not stop thinking of Merritt. And so I figured it would give me a kind of a good opportunity to talk about Merritt a little bit. I don't know a ton about him except for that I like his work. In addition, there's also H. Rider Haggard, King Solomon's Mines, which is another fantastic pulp adventure in the vein of Seventh Continent. And then A. Merritt's Seven Footprints to Satan, The Ship of Ishtar, fabulous novel, just fantastic. Dwellers in the Mirage, pretty good. I think it gets a little long for what it is. The Metal Monster, another fantastic, just brilliant book. And look at those covers. Man, those covers are awesome. And The Black Wheel, which I actually haven't read yet. But so Seventh Continent is an interesting game. I do like it. I do find it interesting. But I also do not find it, I don't find it exciting at all. It's a very cerebral game. It kind of exists in this really weird kind of this weird zone that I don't see too many adventure games existing in. As somebody said on Facebook, this is a game that you play over a cup of tea, and I totally agree with that. As you're exploring the world, trying to figure out what's going on, it's kind of this this leisurely game, and the mechanics of it go into defining that, in my opinion. And what I mean by that is the game it's so effortless to play that it almost doesn't feel like you're playing a game. It really does feel like you're reading an adventure book where the hardest thing you have to do is turn the page. You know, you're just flipping over cards. You are exploring this island by going through a very large number of cards, looking for certain numbers, like you would be looking for certain passages in a choose your own adventure book or a solo game book, laying them out. You're not drawing your map because the cards are creating your map. You're doing challenges in which you need to get a certain number of successes in order to explore. You're having to worry about your food and stamina. There's survival aspects. There is some conflict. But while I'm playing, I never really feel my heart rate never races. I never feel excited. I never want to stand up and be like, oh, you know, what's going to happen next? It's more of the discovery is, it's like an intellectual discovery for me, where I'm looking, I'm reading, I'm contemplating where to go. So I know a lot of people, especially like Tom Vassell, say that this is like the best exploration game of all time. And while I do think it is a good exploration game, for me, it only really is great at one half of what I consider to be the two qualities needed in exploration, and that is discovery and excitement. And those two things paired together create a super well-rounded game of exploration. So this handles the discovery part of exploration better than mini games, maybe the best. Maybe, I don't know if I can say that or not, but it doesn't, for me, offer the second part, which is the excitement. And what I mean by that is, so like in a game like Warhammer Quest, where, you know, while you are exploring the dungeon, you're turning over these event cards, and it's always, you never know. It's like you might turn over, it's like, oh, so, you know, it's a group of minotaurs, or it's a snake pit, or it's some kind of trap, or some kind of you have some kind of NPC encounter. And even though that game is, you know, it's quite dated and it doesn't have, you know, this kind of like elaborate art and narrative system, it's still, when I'm going through event cards in games like that, or in Dungeon Degenerate's Hand of Doom, or, you know, Arkham Horror 3rd Edition, or even like A Touch of Evil, I feel this sense of excitement, because the mechanics of the game and of the way that the conflicts play out, it just like, it often leads me to standing up and having exciting dice rolls, or cheering or jeering. And like, none of that has happened for me yet in the Seventh Continent. Now I'm only playing through the first curse, and I'm definitely going to play all of them. I even ordered 3 more off of a guy on Board Game Geek, because I do really like this game. So maybe I will discover that excitement as I play on. But as of right now, this game exists in a part of my brain that is all kind of intellectual and cerebral, without being like a puzzle. So, you know, you don't have to figure out puzzles. It's just, it's a peaceful game to play. And I wish that I could pick up more on a sense of danger or a sense of dread. I wish that the game had a more palpable sense of, you know, impending doom. But so far I haven't gotten that yet. But what I have gotten is a fantastic game that makes me think of these great works of fiction by Abraham Merritt. And you know what, for that I am very grateful, because there aren't very many games that exist that give me the feeling of reading something by Merritt. or any of the great pulp authors. You know, this game in some ways does remind me a little bit of Lost Valley, and I would think that it would be a very interesting game to have something like this without any sense of supernatural at all. You know, a game like this that was like the theme of Lost Valley meets Deliverance or something, which Deliverance is another like fantastic story of exploration. It's also a very disturbing story of exploration, of somewhat of existentialism and nihilism, and the how far you can push a man before he completely breaks. And maybe I will start to get that in this game as I push on and go through more curses and look for more things and have more experiences in this game. And I'm hoping I do. But one of the interesting things mechanically about the Seventh Continent is, and I've heard this from multiple people talking to them on a Facebook group that I'm a part of, is that the game is so simple that people think that they're playing wrong. And I've actually like looked into the book, like, is that it? When I first set out to learn this game, I was actually confused because I kept thinking that I was missing stuff and reading and not reading the rules properly. But the game is so simple, and that's probably why it just feels so effortless to play. There's absolutely there's no upkeep. There's nothing you do at the beginning of the turn or the end of the turn, or you don't have to move a tracker or keep track of minions or hit points, or all of that is gone in this game. You do one thing each turn. You take an action. You take an action that is either printed on a card from your hand, you take an action that maybe you have an item for, or you take an action that is on where you are on the map. And there are a number of actions that you can take. Each time you take an action, you do exactly the same thing. You draw a certain number of cards here, and you look for a certain number of stars. Oh, now that would have been a really good draw, because there are hardly any cards with 3 stars. So you look for a number of stars to see if you have enough to pass the test. This deck of action cards here represents your stamina, your life. If it ever runs out, you get to shuffle it one time, and then you keep drawing. And if you ever discover a curse card on your second time through the deck, that is game over. And that, honestly, like mechanically, that's all there is to the game. And so I understand that, like when I was playing, I was like, oh wait, am I doing this right? Is that really all there is to it? And that is both a plus and a negative, I think, to the game. Way more so a plus. But sometimes you could be playing it so fast, the turns are so fast that you can take 5 or 10 turns before you even realize, like, oh wait, what have I been doing? And if you lose track of what you're doing, you will burn through your stamina super fast. So while it is an easy game to play, almost an effortless game to play, it is a very challenging game to win. And I'm actually cheating a little bit, but I'm just going to keep going through this first curse without worrying about dying, just so I can see the game and how it's played and the things that it has to offer. And then when I go through the other curses, I'm going to play, for reals. And when I mentioned, so this is like a clue card you get with your first curse, and it's a map that's kind of telling you where you need to go. And it is actually a pretty good map, because there are things on the map here that you will see, that you will recognize here, like, okay, I know I need to go this way. And if you forget about this, because it is very easy to forget about this, because there's not anything saying, hey, remember to check your map, or this is the map portion of the turn, or this is the journal and satchel portion of the turn, you will forget stuff. And you will be exploring and realizing that you are wasting all of your food and all of your stamina, and the way you needed to go was actually right over here. And you were over here diddling around in the swamp for some strange reason. Less said about that, the better. but you'll have all these clues, different kinds of experience that you can use when you rest to buy new skills and things that go into the action deck there. But yeah, again, I'm not going to talk for a long time about this game. There is a ton on it. The second Kickstarter just fulfilled, so you're seeing all kinds of expansions. You're seeing the prices for this game skyrocket, $400, $500, $600. I've seen it go far. I think the price for this game is astronomical, especially when it's just cards. It's a lot of cards, yes, but I think the price is very high, and I got it in a trade, so I was happy with that. I would not have paid for it, even when the second Kickstarter was coming on. It was too expensive I thought, for what you got, and for the fact that I just was thinking, well, why can't they just make this a game book? Because ultimately, that's what this is. It's a game book with cards. You don't have a character sheet. You have cards. You know, you're not writing your items down. You're drawing cards for them, and I kind of wish they would have made it like that. It would have been cheaper, but that's okay. People love it, and if you want to get it, if anything I've said sounds interesting, pick it up. If you like the works of A. Merritt, you want to check him out, do so. And that is it for the Seventh Continent. I'm sure I'll have more to say about this at a later time. So, all right, guys, talk to you later. Bye-bye.